الله أكبر حي على الصلاة الله أكبر.
We have to remember the relations that bind us, that binds us to love and unity. And first of all, that relation is the relation within ourselves. The relation between the lower and the higher self.
That's right.
Our prophet taught us that man has two selves.
That's right.
That's the lower self and the higher self. He said that the higher self is the mother of the virtues and the harmonies of life and breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. Islam? He said that the lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. Islam? So we can recognize by, analyzing ourselves and our actions throughout our week, which part of ourselves is responding to certain external stimuli based on the action. Islam? And we know that the actions of the soul is thinking, reasoning, willing, and understanding. Thinking, understanding, reasoning, willing. Islam?
Islam.
And when we utilize those actions, then the outcome can be right. Because right is a response of the higher self, right? It says justice, mercy, love, and right. We utilize those four actions appropriately, within the confines of our within the confines of our higher selves, then our outcomes will always be right. Islam? Because we have a few visitors here, I want to take the time to kind of give a background or overview of, why we are here, who we are, who is Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America, etc. Is this your first time visiting Moorish Science Temple of America? Okay. Your first time as well, brother? Or you?
I've been with this Moorish Science Temple.
Okay. But you said that this is the first time you...
First time I've been here.
Gotcha. Praise Allah. Well, sister and brother, if, just in case. Prophet Noble Drew Ali was born in the state of North Carolina, 1886 AD. He founded the Moorish Science Temple of America in 1913, and the purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America is to uplift fallen humanity. Islam? The purpose, the reason that he came to us on these shores of America, because, after the time of slavery, after we were so-called emancipated from slavery, we had lost our identity, we lost our culture, our heritage, religion, etc. We lost everything about ourselves so that we can rebuild who we were, after that time of slavery. So when he founded the Moorish Science Temple of America to uplift fallen humanity, he taught us how to be ourselves. And by teaching us how to be ourselves, he had to return to us our identity. And that identity that he gave back to us was Moorish American. He said that we're Moorish Americans because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. And in that instruction or that key, he wasn't saying that we were descendants of, the current day Morocco, but he said that the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites whom inhabited the northwestern and the southwestern shores of Africa. So anyway, by way of the West Africa, is our lineage, Islam. And so by doing so, we're able to trace ourselves back. Our prophet said, master the backward through the ages, the mastermind can trace themselves, and thus they know. And when we're able to trace ourselves, we can understand where we came from, so that we understand where we're going. Right? You heard that phrase before, right? So, through European psychology, we were stripped of these key elements that made us who we were, right? Or made us, that would make us who we are. So he returned these key elements to us in the year of 1913 by founding the Moorish Science Temple of America. And this is an institution for our people to come in so that we can understand, again, who we are, who we were, who we are, and where we're going from there. Because if we don't have that, then we are subject to the misuses and abuses that the citizens care to bestow upon us. One of the reasons that we see a lot of the issues that we see in our communities, the poverty, the lack of education, joblessness, etc., in part is because we're not a unified, we're not a unit. We don't come together. First of all, we don't love each other. Our prophet said that, we need to learn to love instead of hate. Islam? So when we learn to love each other, then we can build with one another and recognize that we have a connection, that we have an obligation to each other. Islam? So we have to recognize that, in our daily lives that, first of all, we have to work on ourselves. And this is what, the Holy Quran or the Moorish Science Temple of America is designed to do. It's designed for you. It's a self-help book, right? It's designed for you to help rebuild yourself so that you can develop, better relationships with other people, outside of yourself and outside of your home. Islam? Every other group of people have their Moorish Science Temple of America. Don't get it twisted. Every other group of people have their particular institutions that they can go to and learn about their historical legacies. Islam? And so the Moorish Science Temple of America is ours. The Prophet said that you are not Negroes, black folks, colored people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to you by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. So what he was doing was returning our nationality so that we recognize that we are not those slave labels, and in essence that our people were not slaves. Islam? Our people were not slaves. Our people were captives, right? They were forced into servitude, but they were not slaves. Islam? So we have to remove that conditioning, because when we identify ourselves as, and not to be radical or agitating to a particular group, when we identify ourselves as descendants of slavery, then what we're saying is that our origin began during slavery. And now here we are. Islam? But that is not our origin. We could trace ourselves all the way back to Allah. Islam, as Moorish Americans, we could trace ourselves back to the descendants of the ancient the Canaanites and the Moabites. Islam? So we're not descendants of slaves. Don't put that on your ancestors. We come from much greater than that. And we say this all the time. We built X, Y, and Z. We built this and we built that. Then we'll say that we're descendants of slaves. That's European psychology. Islam? He said that you're not black people. Our prophet said that black, according to science, means death. Black and Negro is the same word. Negro is just a Spanish. Negro is Spanish for black, right? And so this word, it deludes to slavery. This is the great sin that prophet came to remove from us, because when you cling on to names that delude to slavery, then your conditions are going to result as that which you identify with. I often talk about in my recovery groups that I facilitate. Oftentimes in the 12-step program, so to speak, or in a recovery program, one of the things that you have to do first is to admit your powerlessness, and then you have to identify as an addict. Think about that. If I force you to, first of all, you are what you identify as, right? What do policemen do? They say they protect and serve, right? That's what they're supposed to do. What do firemen do? Fight fires, right? They put out fires, right?
That's right.
What do electricians do?
Work with electricity.
Work with electricity, What do doctors do? What do healers do?
All right.
They heal, right? So what do addicts do? Islam? We have to reverse the psychology by teaching these people that they are more than what the label is, right? You're not that thing. You are something more. Man is not the body nor the soul, but a spirit and part of Allah. Islam? So when I can get you to identify with your spiritual self, with the spirit man, then you recognize that you are much greater than the labels and the conditions that other people decide to put upon you. Islam? Tell me if I'm wrong, because it just makes sense to me. When I read the Prophet's lessons, that's what makes sense to me. Islam? Islam. Any questions about the Moorish Science Temple of America? Okay. Islam. So the Prophet brought you, this institution for you to bring, for you to learn who you are, for you to learn yourself. Islam. We're we're not against, other groups, right? We're not against other Asiatic groups who are striving to perpetuate, the uplift and the fall of humanity. In fact, we encourage those groups to also, unite with us. We're not trying to take away people's stuff. We want to help. We want to assist in that great work. Islam. So if you Hebrew Israelite, praise Allah. You identify with the Kemetic, practices, praise Allah. Right? You Christian, praise Allah. We're not about, game banging against our people.
That's right.
This is a divine and national movement. Islam. So, the Prophet said, in fact, I'll read. That's customary in the Moorish Science Temple of America. We read from the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is something I was reading. The question is asked.
Before you ask, you might arise and give praise. Arise, give praise to Allah.
Praise to Allah.
Honest to His Prophet, Noble Jawali.
This is Prophet Muhammad.
You recognize. Yes, ma'am.
What do we call Moorish Americans and not Northern? What's the issue meaning like, kind of or part of? So, I want to know like why is it Moorish and not something else?
Islam. Ish also denotes belonging to. It also denotes, denoting the nationality of a thing. So, nobody asked Jewish, why don't they just call themselves Jews? Nobody asked the Swedish people. You know what I'm saying? But the ish is a adjective which describes, the nation that that you belong to. Prophet said that Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites. So the modern, what is the modern term for Moabite? Moroccan, correct me from Islam. So Moor is, Moor is global. Moor is a global. Moors are global people, right? But when we're talking about nationality, we are Moorish American. Islam. So, the Moorish American, Moorish being our national descent name, and American being our free national name. Islam. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I just see, a lot of voices arguing.
Islam. A lot. Yeah. A lot of people like to argue with the Prophet.
So, yeah.
It's unfortunate because why argue with the Prophet of Allah? Some of the elders say that the Prophet is right and the world is wrong. Islam. If you look up the definition of ish, also it'll say exactly. In fact, a simple Google, cheap Google suffix says forming adjectives from nouns, says having the qualities or characteristics of, also says forming adjectives of nationality or religious or ethnic group. That, right. So what happens is people like to nitpick. They'll go into a dictionary, and there'll be 45 definitions, and they'll like to pick the one that suits them, so that they can argue against a prophet of Allah. Right? Interesting, right? But if they were a prophet of Allah, then they would have a whole divine movement. That's why I see it. Anywho, that answer the question? I'm good? Okay, I escaped that one. Praise Allah. I want to read from chapter 48. And say Islam when you all have made it to the... Praise Allah. Chapter 48. The end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. Says the last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days, to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed which is to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner of Jesus, who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and return to their own and be one with their Father God, Allah. Islam? So it talks about, the prophet being, the last prophet in these days in time, right? You have a lot of people who talk about, European psychology would suggest that there are no prophets, that comes after, those in the Bible, or that comes, after those, or that comes after Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam, But to say that is to contain Allah, right? No finite mind can circumscribe those, things infinite. We can't circumscribe Allah. We can't put Allah into a box and say what Allah can and cannot do. Islam? Allah sent us a prophet, and, that is what it is. He sent us, the last prophet in these days and times. Prophets are always coming. Islam? Every nation is sent a messenger. Islam? So you have a prophet. You know how great that is? You had a prophet that come to you. Islam? That's something to be proud of, right? That's something to make you clean yourself up, right? And make sure that you leave out the door with the best representation of yourself and your family and your prophet. Islam? That's something to be proud of. If our people understood the significance that they had a prophet come to them, we could change our conditions overnight. Islam? Think about that. Because who else came to you? Who else came to you with who returned or reconnected you to your historical legacy? Think about that. Everybody else, continued to say that you were black, Negro, colored, right? African American, etc., etc. But Prophet Noble Drew Ali reconnected you back to that historical legacy, to that, he assisted you in the continuation, right, of your legacy, because you indeed have a strong legacy. Do you know that? Islam? He said that John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days to warn and stir up the nations and prepare them to receive the divine creed, which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner of Jesus who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah. His name was Marcus Garvey. We give Marcus Garvey high honors because Marcus Garvey came and prepared, he came and paved the way and purified the minds of the people to receive, the coming message of love, right? Marcus Garvey was purity made manifest, right? So he purified the people. He prepared them, because if he didn't, and Prophet Noble Drew Ali just brought you, all these he brought you, your nationality and, your divine creed, you'll not be prepared for it because the road wasn't laid down. It wasn't, the path wasn't paved, right? Marcus Garvey did that. Marcus Garvey paved the way so that we could be able to receive that message of love, right? It's like receiving, who touched the hot stove when they were young and mom told them not to, right? Quite a few of us, did something that our mama told us not to, right? But she prepared us. In our mind, we knew that, okay, but I'm gonna go test it anyway, right? So she warned us, Marcus Garvey warned the nations. Islam? That's what it says. Instruction 4 says the Moorish Science Temple is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc. that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We as a clean and pure nation, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve their gods or their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Islam? Let me go back. It says, we as a clean and pure nation, right? Descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Why is that? What does that mean?
It mixes color.
Mixes color? I guess scientifically, yeah. What does that mean?
They're not pure.
Praise Allah. What else? Why do we not desire to amalgamate? Y'all help me out.
They're not part of Africa.
Not a part of our legacy, not a part of our lineage. Okay, Islam. What else? No, we got some more. Islam.
Rise and give praise to Allah, the author, creator, comprehensible, absolute. Give honors to Mr. Ali, his love, made manifest for the Prophet.
Islam, or you recognize?
I would say we as a clean and pure nation do not wish to amalgamate European nations, but best be put, in my opinion, in terms of our standards, clean and pure, like us living in tune with nature, in tune with what's right, with art, and the European being more in tune with the lower self, lewdness, hatred, murder, death, greed, and everything else that harms. And amalgamate in itself to not even acquiesce in a subtle way to their ways.
Islam.
To not submit in any way to their teachings.
Islam, boy. Islam. You know, it says that neither serve their gods, serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed. You know, early in the Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, it talks about, you know, a man's God is his ideal, right? Man's God is his ideal. As man unfolds, his God unfolds, right? God's today, a man's God today, tomorrow is not God. Islam. So if you know, we're talking about the ideals, right? Then we don't want to amalgamate into ideals that are not ours. Islam? We don't want to serve ideals that are not ours. This is an ideal. Islam? Nationality is an ideal. Why would I want to serve an ideal that is not mine? Islam? You know, it talks about, he says, instruction 3 at the end, it says that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, right? So I don't want to amalgamate, you know, and worship under someone else's vine and fig tree. Islam? I give up my divine salvation when I do that. Islam? Islam. So this is what the Moorish Science Temple of America is designed to do, is to bring you back, you know, within your own, so that you can worship under your own vine and fig tree. Learn of your own ideals, right? The ideals of your forefathers. Islam? Instruction 7, therefore we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations, as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation. Islam? So this ideal, this, you know, the church and Christianity was prepared by the European nations for their earthly salvation. Islam? And this is not speaking radical or agitating, but this can be proven. We could, you know, through research, just a simple sheet Google search, right? We can see this. Islam, but we're not, again, we don't preach or teach hatred, against our brothers and sisters who are under that ideal. Because if they're striving to follow the teachings of Jesus, then all praise is due to Allah. Because Jesus means what? Justice. Islam. So if they follow the teachings of Jesus, we have no problem with it. We follow the teachings of Jesus. It says that Jesus was a descendant of the ancient Canaanites and Moabite nations. Islam. So that's one of our forefathers. Islam. Will you give them brief the line and genealogy through which Jesus came? Some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, Joseph by Mary. Islam. Those are our forefathers. Those forefathers practice Islam. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said Islam means what? Peace. Peace with yourself, peace with your surroundings. Islam. So Islam is not Islam don't mean pray 5 times a day. Islam. I keep saying Islam, but that's an affirmation, confirmation, right? Peace. Submission, right? Submission to the divine within you. Islam? Sound like I'm saying something that you recognize. Praise Allah. But that's what Islam is. Islam don't mean, give me some example more. What they say, what they think about Islam,
Long beards.
Yeah, Islam don't mean orange beards and, that ain't Islam. It's a customs. Islam. Islam definitely ain't terrorism. Terrorism ain't peace. That's chaos. That ain't us. We don't do that. Our forefathers were the founders of Islam. Our forefathers were the founders of the holy city of Mecca. Islam? That's something to be proud of. And your prophet brought that back to you so that you can understand how to weave through the chaos, how to weave through the mess that that the media is putting out, that everybody is putting out into the universe, so that you can see the truth. He said that in all the world there are only 2 things: truth and falsehood. Right? Truth is that which cannot change. Truth cannot change nor pass away. Right. Falsehood is that which seems to be. It's an illusion. Islam? In all the world there are only 2 things. There are only 2 things. That's it. He taught us how to distinguish between the 2. He taught us how to recognize our lower self and our higher self so that we can understand, right, the divine nature of ourselves. So we can understand how to control our passions and emotions. Islam? I mean, where else they teaching that at? This is an institution for you to learn how to be noble. Where else they teaching that at? In its truest sense. It says Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So the Prophet was teaching us how to be noble men and women. A noble person is one of the highest of character. It ain't got nothing to do with how much you know. Right? Because the most important thing to know is what? Yourself. I come in here and talk about the stars and the moon all day long, right? But go out into the world and do folly. Because I don't know myself. He said, wisdom is the fruit of applied knowledge, right? Otherwise, it's just information. Because if I got all the knowledge and I'm not applying it, it's dead. That's Negro. That's Negro behavior. And you are not Negroes. Islam? I mean, if you are, let me know. Because I probably need to talk, preach a different lesson. But y'all ain't Negroes, right? Somebody else gave you that name. So why follow it? Islam? Instruction 8. While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, it didn't say we were converting. The Prophet, he didn't say convert to Islam. Don't let no Arabs tell you that you converted. Your original nature is Islam. Islam? While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. Islam? So if you go back and said the church and Christianity were founded by the Europeans for their earthly salvation. It didn't say their divine salvation. Islam? But Islam was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. This is your earthly and divine salvation. Instruction 9, the covenant of the great God Allah. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah have given thee. It says, come all ye Asiatics, come all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. Right? Because we've been taught hate. We got hate down to a science. We know hate like no other people on earth. Islam? But what would it mean for you to go out on Cleveland Avenue and everybody is practicing love? That liquor store won't exist. You know, some of us don't like that. But that liquor store won't exist if we were actually practicing love, right? Because you have to practice love with yourself first. That means that you wouldn't do anything to yourself to harm yourself, right? The Lord self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and what? Everything that harms, right? So your very decision, everything that you decide for yourself will be rooted in love. Contrary to popular thought, I'll say, contrary to popular belief, I'm trying not to say that. Love is not, well, people say that love is an action word. I disagree. In part. I disagree in part. Because an action, a decision has to be made before the action takes place, right? What takes place before the action? A thought. So love is a thought. We say that Prophet Noble Drew Ali is a thought, right? Love, thought made manifest. Prophet Noble, what is a prophet? A thought of Allah manifested in the flesh. Islam? Love, before it is an action, it is a thought. It is a mentality first, right? So if love, if your thoughts are rooted in love, right? If your mentality is love, then everything that comes from it is love, right? Everything that I do with you or to you is rooted in love. Everything that I say to you is rooted in love, right? Because my mentality is love. Islam? This is why Prophet Noble Drew Ali was a love thought made manifest, right? Islam? So we have to learn to love instead of hate, because we don't hate too much. We don't hate too much. It says, we are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets. You know, one of the things that's going around is I guess something that's picking up steam is this talk about, you know, who we are, right? Our identity, and, you know, how we make ourselves into recognized citizens of, you know, of the United States of America, etc., right? Besides the fact that Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought you that in 1913, the conversation, you know, has now shifted to, I'm trying to choose my words carefully. Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought you what it takes to make better citizens out of men and women, right? That's written somewhere, right? So if that be the case, he said the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabit the northwest and southwestern shores of Africa. Islam? Why are we Moorish American? Because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Moorish American specifically is the nationality that makes us better citizens of these United States of America. Moorish American is the identity for the foundational so-called African Americans in America. Moorish American is the nationality for those whose ancestors suffered the institution of slavery in America. There's no other name that applies. Islam? It already exists. Why do we keep reinventing the wheel? Islam? We keep making it harder for ourselves. But you had a prophet, not regular men and women, and you had a prophet to come to you to correct all those issues over a century ago. And these issues are still trying to be addressed in other ways and manners and etc. And the Moorish Americans are steadily yelling out, here we are, brother said, and I won't mention the brother name. Brother said, we need a flag. Well, we got a flag because we are American citizens. Islam? We got another flag because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Islam? Brother said we need a constitution. Well, we got a constitution. It's called the Constitution of the United States of America. We also got a divine constitution.
That's right.
Islam? Because this was founded for your earthly and divine salvation. Islam? So why do we need all these things again? Why do we keep reinventing the wheel? What are we looking for? Islam? We're looking for a ghost. We're looking for a spook god. Our brothers are looking for the salvation to descend from the sky. The only devil that man should be redeemed from is self. Islam? We're looking for redemption in all the wrong places. Your salvation is within you. Islam? And the man that brought that to you was Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Nobody else. I might be biased. I might be. But I haven't seen anybody that brought, as much for our liberation as Prophet Noble Drew Ali did. Prophet Noble Drew Ali had an answer for every question. Islam? He had an answer for every question. The Moorish Science Temple of America is what you make it. Because the Moorish Science Temple of America is not, the four walls. It is you who make the Moorish Science Temple of America. There's a saying that says, ask not, what the country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Islam? We echo that same motto. Ask not what the Moorish Science Temple of America can do for you, but what you can do for the Moorish Science Temple of America. Islam? Any questions from the members or the visitors who are here with us today? Thank you all for coming out today. We love when visitors come to hear these divine teachings of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because these lessons belong to you. These are your lessons. This is not ours. This not my organization. I didn't find this organization. This organization belongs to all of our people. Islam? And we desire your assistance with building, this institution, with building this divine and national movement, so that our people can have, a salvation for themselves. When we go and look at other communities, it's funny because we always refer to other people by their national descent name. Islam? So, look at the Chinese Americans. Look at them. Look at the Jewish community, right? We always refer to them by their national descent name. Look at the Japanese Americans, etc. Look at the Koreans. We always, right? Then when it comes to us, Negroes, right? Because every time we refer to ourselves, it's in a demeaning or bad manner, right? Can't tell black folk nothing, right? We do that all the time. I'm guilty of it.
Yes.
I'm very guilty of that, right? But that's why we have these teachings, right? To work on that mentality, to change it, right? To see the best, in one another, to see the best in ourselves, right? Because we are a divine people. We just lost our way. Islam? Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought us the compass. Not the one, that we use to circumscribe our passions, to keep it with a bound of righteousness. Well, he brought us the compass to give us direction. The other compass. Yeah, that compass. Islam, so, our doors are open to all members and sympathizers who wish to, assist us in the uplifting of fallen humanity. And, glad that you're here to hear our message. Islam? Praise Allah. Praise Allah. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, you good.
How do we get these teachings to reach people who don't understand, who are not inside of themselves? Maybe one left the church or saw a difference in God and they poured down with their school and now they're trying to find or search. How do we reach them? Because I know personally some people who they can identify with more science, but they don't understand.
Islam.
So how can the teachers reach them? Without coming here is little. How can we reach people outside?
Islam. That's a beautiful question. Key 16 in the Quran questions for Moorish Americans. The prophet asks, how did the prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans? It says, by teaching them to be themselves. Islam? So while we're here, on these holy days and Sunday schools and, and all other times for us to learn about this movement, what first of all, what we're learning is how to be ourselves. Islam? And when we learn how to be ourselves and we carry that out into the world, other people see it. Because there's something that glows about you, right? Because when these teachings actually set in and become a part of every part, it becomes a part of who you are, right? We were given the tools of the workshop of the mind, right? In chapter 5, it says that we use the hammer to drive home the truth and make it a part of every part. And when that happens, you start to radiate. Once you go out into the cares of the world, people start to see a difference about you, right? And then they start to ask questions, right? And as a Moorish American, when we start talking, we can't stop. Islam. And then that's the time you get to educate, people about who they are. Islam, because it's a message that people haven't heard. I do it every day, right? But again, we have to be the Marcus Garvey and pave the way for them to receive the message of love. Because if they don't see you being what you know, then they won't ask you about what you know. Islam? So your very actions, how you carry yourself, at work, right? And, at home, in the workplace and, just out, right? How you carry yourself, how you dress, how you talk, right? How you treat other people, right? That is something that draws people to you. You see what I'm saying? And then they start to ask questions. I find myself talking about nationality in just about every conversation that I have. Because at this point, I don't know anything else better to talk about. I'm telling you, if you call me, we're going to end up talking about the prophet. I promise you. Some kind of way. I'm going to end up on that topic. Because I don't know any. My mom called me the other day. There was a death in that was close to us, to our family. And the only thing that I could think about to send the sister was chapter 4. Because that was the only thing I could think about. How do I assist, in comforting and helping comforting the sister in how to deal with the death of the loved one, right? Chapter 4, here you go. That's all I got, right? And not to be cold about it, but those words spoke for me. Islam. So our job is to be fishermen, of men, so to speak. But we have to be what we know ourselves. It says that if man would know, he himself must be what he knows. Paraphrasing, right? So if I'm being what I know, then I'm being something different than Negro, black, and colored. Islam. So people get, are drawn to you, and then that conversation is going to happen regardless. Islam. So this is why we tell people, study your lessons, right? Get into your lessons, make them become a part of who you are, because everything that you'll find yourself starting to speak the words of the prophet in your, in your regular, everyday conversations. That's why it becomes second nature, first nature, right? It becomes who you are. So I hope I answered that question. Yeah, Islam. Praise Allah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if it's gonna make sense.
Everything makes sense in the Morris Science Temple of America.
So, like, what would you say to make love easy and to, like, just drop the hate? Like, just stop all of it. Because sometimes you, like, try to build up and, I don't want that, but it's hard to fight.
Islam. Beautiful question. All right. Y'all just gonna force me to read chapter 5, so. No, praise Allah. Don't be sorry. This is what we're here for.
Help me to
Absolutely.
change a whole lot about
Absolutely.
myself.
Absolutely. If you can, turn to chapter 5 in Holy Quran of the Morris Science Temple of America. I got a time sheet. I'm good. Praise Allah. Time never was. Praise Allah. Chapter 5, it says, pardon yourself, say Islam, everyone's made it.
Islam.
Praise Allah. Chapter 5, it says, after the feast, the homeward journey, the missing Jesus, the search for him, his parents find him in the temple. He goes with them to Nazareth, symbolic meaning of carpenter's tools. And I'll just read the whole chapter. It says, the great feast of the Pascha was ended, and the Nazarenes were journeying toward their homes. And they were in Samaria, and Mary said, where is my son? No one has seen the boy. And Joseph sought among their kindred who were on their way to Galilee, but they had seen him not. Then Joseph, Mary, and a son of Zebedee returned and sought through all Jerusalem, but they could find him not. And Mary asked the guards, had they seen Jesus, a little boy about 12 years old? The guards replied, yes, he is in the temple, now disputing with the doctors of the law. So Jesus was, somewhere disputing with the doctors of the law while his parents were looking for him. Joseph and Mary being his parents. But he wasn't at the club, right? He wasn't at the liquor store. He was in the temple. Islam? He was in the Morris Science Temple. No, he was in the temple, right? Disputing with the doctors of the law. So he was, speaking with learned men and women, people who was going to help, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but assist him in developing his thoughts and his mind, right? Helping educate himself and things like that. So he was talking to people who were going to assist in his growth, right? Yes, he is in the temple now disputing with the doctors of the law. It says, and they went in and found him as the guards had said. And Mary said, why, Jesus, why do you treat your parents thus? Lo, we have sought 2 days for you. We feared that some great harm had overtaken you. And Jesus said, do you not know that I must be about my Father's work? Islam? So he's explaining to them, look, I'm out here doing my Father's work. If you ain't with that, right? But he was about his Father. He was about the work of Allah, right? Says, but he went round and pressed the hand of every doctor of the law and said, I trust that we meet again. So at that point, he recognized that, that to obey his father and mother, as I recited in Act 7 of our Divine Constitution bylaws, right? So he yielded, right? But he explained to them, I must be about my Father's work, but he respected his parents. And he said, okay, I got to go. Let me go press the hands of these folks and get on up out of here before I get a whipping, right? It says, and then he went forth with his parents on their way to Nazareth. And when they reached their home, he wrought with Joseph as a carpenter. One day, as he was bringing forth the tools for work, he said, now this is the part getting into the answer for your question. These tools remind me of the ones we handle in the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character, right? So he's talking about these tools that he saw, Joseph was bringing, and they reminded him of something that was internal, right? So I'll read. These tools remind me of the ones we handle in the workshop of the mind, where things were made of thought and where we build up character. Then he says we use the square to measure all our lines, to straighten out the crooked places of the way, and make the corners of our conduct square, right? So he's talking about conduct, talking about using this tool that we use to build up actual buildings and edifices, right? But using it as a symbolic, right? You know, using it as a symbolic tool within the mind to understand how it relates to building up my character. Islam? Then he says we use the compass to draw circles around our passions and desires to keep them in the bounds of righteousness, right? So the compass, you know, he's drawing circles around his, you know, he's drawing circles around his passions. So, you know, when you get angry and emotion, you know, the actions oftentimes that come from that when they're uncontrolled is, you know, lower self behavior, right? Hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. But your question was about hatred. So he using the compass to circumscribe that, right? So that he can be conscious that when I'm angry, I have to stop so that I don't move out of bounds, right? You know, you know a little bit about sports?
Yeah.
A little bit. Which sport you know a little bit about?
I know about football.
Okay. What happens when you go out of bounds in football?
What happens when you go out of bounds?
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to go out of bounds?
What, time stop?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. When you go out of bounds in basketball, what happened?
Clock stop.
Clock stop. What else happened?
The ball whistle, the referee.
And then what? It's the other team's ball.
When it goes out of bounds?
In basketball, yeah. When you step out of bounds, then it's the other team's ball.
Basketball.
Yes. Just try to use a sport that you can recognize. But that's what happens. So imagine that, right? If the ball is, you know, is my salvation, right? It's my birthright, right? If this ball is, you know, my sanity, right, and my peace, right? When I step out of bounds, chaos comes. Then I end up giving the ball to somebody else, right? You know, you ever hear a phrase when people say, you know, when you allow people to when you allow people to make you respond in a negative way, you give them the power, right? You give them power over you, right? So if I respond to you negatively, I'm giving you power. I'm giving you my power because I don't have control over my own passions. Islam?
Wow.
Right? So then, in essence, I'm giving my ball away. I've stepped out of bounds. The circle that I drew around for myself to keep me within the bounds of righteousness, I've stepped outside of it, right? So I have to stay within that circle. Islam? This is why on the front of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, you have the circle 7. And if I'm allowed to say this, circle.
Wait, what's up, Shane?
No, you good. The circle is the symbol of perfected man, right? The 7 is the number of perfected man. If that 7 goes outside of that circle, I'm perfected, right? Islam. So I'll keep reading. Key 16. We use the axe to cut away the knotty, useless, and ungainly parts and make the character symmetrical. So those things that's causing you to have bad character, you have to cut it away. You have to get rid of it. Islam? We use the hammer to drive home the truth, to pound it in until it is a part of every part. So all of these lessons, these holy and divine lessons, we use the hammer to pound them within ourselves to make it a part of every part so that we can be what we know. Islam? We use the plane to smooth the rough, uneven surface of joint and block and board that go to build the temple for the truth. The chisel, line, the plummet, and the saw all have their uses in the workshop of the mind. And then this ladder, with its trinity of steps, faith, hope, and love, on it we climb up to the dome of purity and life. And on the 12-step ladder, we ascend until we reach the pinnacle of that which life is spent to build, the temple of perfected man. Islam? So we're talking about these tools, we're using these tools so that we can build the temple of perfected man, right? So in order for me to learn how to love instead of hate, I have to use these tools daily, right? I have to continue to pound these tools in and make it a part of every part so that my responses to external stimuli, right, is right. That I use my thinking, understanding, reasoning, and willing to the best of my ability, that I'm growing, right? Then my my ideals, improve. It says that a man's ideals is his God. A man's ideal is his God. As man unfolds, his God unfolds. Man's God today, tomorrow is not God. So these tools are assisting us in developing our ideal, in helping us realize the God that is within us, right? And the more that we unfold, the more we start to see the God within us. The more we start to experience the God within us, right? The more others start to see the God within us, to that question that you asked, how do we teach other people? Because when they see the God in you, they want to learn from you. They want to hear from you. They want to talk to you. They want to be around you.
Allahu Akbar.
Islam?
Hayya ala salah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah.